It said that we passed the most important piece of legislation in our time. That was the voting rights bill, right? So is that, but now, we wouldn't have had the drive to do that if we hadn't understood how important we were. I don't mean we as PLC, I mean we as black people came to understand how important we are, right? So we had the two within our movement was two important movements, right? And that was black theology movement, but the larger identity movement, right? See, and it's impossible. It's easy for white people and for most of the press to overlook both of those, right? Is that but without that kind of spirit and taking root in us, we couldn't have won the civil rights movement. You see what I mean? The civil rights movement is basic to the rest of it. If it hadn't started that, it wouldn't happen. But here again, it was black religion that started the civil rights movement, right? Is that and without seeing that, then you can miss those other things because you live in a world that doesn't pay attention to it, right? Is that but and as far as I'm concerned, we don't talk enough black theology yet because things come up and they disappear, and we wonder what happened, right? And they got to keep. We have to keep them going because there has to be a whole other group, right, that gets in on it before we leave it. Because if we just leave it, but here again, I think the importance of the fact that we just leave it is that we don't really know how important we are. See what I mean?
When do you think leaders begin to figure out and sort of see glimpses of how important the role of black leadership is in helping to direct the country and really subsequently the world? Because really, what happened was when the civil rights movement started to gain some momentum, other liberationist movements in Africa and Asia started saying, well, hey, if black folks can do it, so can we.
That's right.
And they started pushing against the colonial regimes and so forth.
And we have to see that everybody realized that when we made it, they can make it. This is why every movement followed us here in the United States. The women's movement became alive again. There was a youth movement that later disappeared as a youth movement because they didn't have to, right? But when you see these guys, baseball players and football players wearing long hair, the white ones, right? All right, we know about us. Right? but is that what we have to see is that they couldn't have done that before. They had to have short hair, they had to cut it to the sides, and they had to look like, they had to look like they were Marine, right? Is it until what? Until the youth movement started as a result of us, because they were imitating us. In other words, is that when we move, this nation moves. And if we stick with it, the world will move. All right? For instance, we're talking about black theology, right? But you see, each one had a name for it, all the islands and so forth, right? They had their own name for it, but they were decolonizing America's white religion. All right, and this is why that until we make white people see that they have white Christianity, right? Not Christianity, white Christianity, right? Until we do that, we can never come into our own.
Wow, that's pretty compelling. One of the arguments that James Cone makes is that a lot of our churches today aren't preaching black theology.
That's right.
They're preaching white theology.
That's the point.
They're watching the televangelists, they're watching the mainstream, and they're teaching white theology that's focused more so on sort of, what they call it more, kind of sort of the pietistic kinds of things, and not the liberationist sort of justice issue.
Why? See, here again, we can't talk about liberation theology, right? if we allow white people to still think they're in control of Christianity. See what I mean? Until we make them guilty, right? And this sounds, I know what it sounds like, right? But until we make them guilty because they don't live up to their religion, right? So that we can tell them straight on, you are not Christian. You are a white American culturalist who hangs up crosses. You see, if we can make them see that, they have to come to the point that they recognize that they were misusing us all the time. See, one of the things when I was doing workshops, now I'm going to brag a little bit. When I was doing workshops across these United States, but you see, when I was doing workshops, the thing that stood out is that I had a whole section on the white church, right? And I'd ask them questions, you know. See, this is what I was talking about this morning. I don't know what I got to it. I had it all out there too late to it. But ask them questions like, well, let me give you what happened in the speech to World Baptist Alliance, and so I said this was taking place in Atlanta, by the way, and I was going to say America was taking place in Atlanta, and so we had all these Southern Baptists, you know, dominated anyway, the largest in the world, right? And the reason is because it took in all the South, because as soon as they had a way to go to the races, they took it, right? They took that route, right? Is it, and we really got to see that. The Northern Baptists decided, we don't play that game, right? The Southern Baptists said that is the game. All right? So I was giving a speech to them, and I asked him, I said, how many of you in here think that your racist granddaddy is going to heaven?
Good Lord.
That's good stuff. I'm with you, right? It's a, and you know, and in a crowd like that, everybody's quiet. So I said, so I shouted it at them again. How many of you really think your granddaddy is going to heaven? How about your grandma? Well, we start talking about grandmas, you see. You know, that's a whole different thing, right? So I said, and it was quiet, so I said, can you be a racist and a Christian at the same time? And when he did, right, see, but it still wasn't coming forth. So I put it another way. I said, do you think that God is going to let you get by with hating black Christians, basically 20 million of us? Do you think that God is just going to welcome you into heaven when you've spent your lifetime hating? And the central concept of the religion is love. And by this will you know that you love one another. Now, you see, is that dark silence is all over the place. So then I turned to the black guys and said, the black people, not guys. Then I turned to black people there and I said, do you think that God's going to send these people, all these white people, to hell because they hate you? And one guy said, yes!
Only one.
But that's it. That's it. Oh, but boy, that's your brother Holland from the back. Yes! But the point is, everybody was quiet. And this is why I said everything I said this morning. Right? You understand the point? Is that we still are not free from the control of white racist Christianity. And at what point do you call it Christianity? See what I mean? Is that Jesus said it, and he said, love one another. That's how you know you're my disciple. I don't know about Christianity because that's been formed yet, right? But he he made it very, very clear that if you're following me, that's different, right? Now, this is why we have got to, in fact, have a liberation theology. Liberation from what, right? Because if you don't even understand what you're talking about, right, you got to start off with liberating from what? From white control of your mind and your soul. Right? Because that's really what's happening. You're saying, I'm willing to go to hell with white people. Because the answer is obvious. Is that if they hate, they're not Christian, so they're not going to heaven. Right? I don't care how you define it. They're not going, right? In fact, even if you define it on earth, I sometimes think, do we ever know what love really is in a racist society?
That's a big question.
See, does any of us really know what love is? Either you love or you don't love. Huh? Right? So if we can be in a situation where for centuries, we really basically hated each other, discarded each other, or humbled ourselves to what we knew was evil. All right? Now we did one of those. Right? If we did, do we really know what love is?
Do you think that was what was so radical about the civil rights movement? You said there were two strands.
That's it.
The Black Power strand that wasn't concerned about this whole love thing.
Yeah.
They were talking about the bullet and the money.
That's
right?
it.
And then you had King and those who sort of espoused the sort of vision of the beloved community.
That's it.
Of which the love ethic
That
was sort of
was
the
central.
So why do you think it was, I mean, if love is so much a part of the Christian narrative, what was so radical about the love ethic? Especially when you demonstrated that with the officer Clark.
That's the point. I could not have demonstrated it had it not been a reality within our movement. You see what I mean? Is that Martin King could not have continued to talk about it. Martin said, I don't care what other people do. Remember they were saying, how about Black Power? He said, I don't care what other people do. But I will be with Christ until the end. He didn't say with Christ, but he might as well. That's what he's talking about, right? Right? Is that that's what it's all about. They are not with Christ. Okay, I was going to say this later on, right? But I do not think that the civil. I think if we had one idea predominant, we wouldn't have. The civil rights movement wouldn't have lasted as long as it lasted. And that's this. I came to ask the question: whose God is God? See, when you ask that question, right?
That's
See, then you right at the heart.
Because the image of God dictates your actions.
That's precisely.
Dictates how you think about the world, the way the world is ordered.
That's it.
So do you think that
It's
was
all about God.
So that's what was at stake in the civil rights
Yeah,
movement?
that's exactly right.
Either it was the white person's God,
Yeah.
or the God of the enslaved.
Precisely. That's precisely right. Because you see, because we didn't solve it, we're still in a slave economy. See, this is what this argument is all about. When they start talking about class stuff.
Slave economy.
Yeah, that's it. It's a slave economy.
Yes, sir.
See, the reason that all these corporations are going somewhere else, is what?
Cheap
Because
labor.
they're looking for slaves, for cheap labor, right? See, that's what it's all about. It's not about cheap labor, it's a matter of slave labor. Huh? Yeah, that's what it is, right? And what makes the billionaire? Slave labor. Huh?
That's right.
What makes the poverty? Slave labor. All right? What makes the school system bad? Slave labor. And all they want is for you to learn enough to serve them. See, cut it any way you want, that's where we got to go, and that's what we got to fight, right? If you're Christians, there wouldn't be slave labor in the first place, and it couldn't remain. Because if you were really Christians, you paid people what you think that you could pay them. All right? So that they and their families could live decently. Because you'd be more concerned about their humanity than their work power.
Wow.
Platform up there on CNN or someplace.
The brother Hayes said,
Is that an answer to the question, or if there's a question of someone saying, aren't y'all over that yet?
is that's no. See, the question is, you're not over your racism yet. And until you get over your racism, we're going to keep reminding you that you are racist. But you see, we don't say it like that. Huh? We say, well, see, and we're not the ones to be ashamed. They're the ones to be ashamed. But if they can get by with it, just asking a little question, they're going to get by.
Something just really has gotten on my nerves. And it's the subpoena of President Obama to come into court here in Georgia. I was at the VA today to pick up my glasses, and I saw the report. I saw the report on the television, and they said that the plaintiffs are saying that President Obama's birth certificate is a photocopy, and that his social security numbers is even a fake. He has a social security number of someone who was born in 1890. And of course, I said, y'all out of y'all damn mind.
That's exactly right. And
I got all these white vets around me.
Yeah.
And they said, well, they didn't say that, I said, well, Social Security didn't come out to 1935. I said, so there's no way. Probably said, well, he said somebody that was born. I said, the bastard was probably dead.
Yeah,
I said, well, let's get to the real issue. The heart of the matter is race.
And the heart of the matter is racism. It's not even race, it's racism, right? And this is what we have to see. It is the sickness within the American Christian community, right? See, because you just can't say the American community, because they're not supposed to have values.
That's right.
See, the values of this nation come out of Christianity. All right? All right. Now, in fact, until it is cured at the root.
So you're saying we're talking really about the struggle within the powers and principalities within the struggle over the church. Kind of like South Africa with the struggle with apartheid and the Dutch Reformed Church that actually affirmed the system of apartheid. And the letter from Birmingham jail was the dialogue between king and leaders and the white church.
And the bishops, so it wasn't just a little guy on the corner.
Yeah, they were.
It was their decision makers who's in charge of their institutions, right? That's who he was arguing with, right? Who was giving those cheap little arguments about why you can keep on enslaving people, right? And Martin wouldn't let it go. And you know what? Of all of Martin's work, the one that's in the school systems all over the world is the letter from Birmingham.
Just to add to that, you talked about a slave economy.
Yeah.
And when we look at the financial systems today, what seems to be off the radar is the fact that churches, particularly white pulpits, have been silent on the issue. So in their pews, like for instance, the president and CEO of Humana and Burger King are Presbyterian elders. They're leaders within their local church.
Precisely. In fact, why are they leaders? Because they got money.
Mhm.
All right? You see, you know, isn't it interesting in this society that two or three of the best Christian denominations are all small. See, those that have denied racism, like the Quakers, right? Like the Mennonites, right? There's one other, right? Is that they're the smallest in America, yet they're the most active about human rights and human relationships. Right? Is that Vince Harding, right?
Mhm.
See, he understood his role, and he was never denied an outstanding preacher, outstanding writer, outstanding brother.
Mhm.
Hmm? Hmm? Within his denomination. Give me a point? Because they believed in the love of God, right? So you didn't have to sidestep. You didn't have to worry about Monday, Sunday morning, whether anybody else like me is going to be there. You know, you're getting a point, right? Now, the thing is that, see, and until we face them with their racism, not just say, are you for a law, or do you believe that black people are human, right? But if you do, why are you so afraid to marry? Huh? Now, the women get a little upset. Black women get a little upset that they say, man, it's hard enough to get, anyway, right? See, but you see, if you open the gate completely, oh, you got plenty. Because they were always making you a mother anyway. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Right.
So we might as well make it decent, you know, Christian and loving. You see it, and that's that other question.
I don't care which way you come, right? Is that you say, but God's not doing anything about it. Oh yeah, he is. It's built in. You can never know what love is, so you're really missing life. Huh? Huh? Because life isn't loving. Loving is life, right? That's why God is. Right? If God isn't, then we're wrong, right? Paul said they were the most miserable of creatures. Is that, and this is what I think that American Christianity, we're the most miserable of creatures and don't even know it. Huh? It is because we are allowing ourselves to be a part of a system that is loveless.
Oh, all right. Question.
No, so I just wanted, I was in a conversation with the principal at Atlanta Prep, Ms. Walker this morning,
Yeah.
and she mentioned you.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and I was very shocked, well, not shocked. She said that you have a mentoring program of young men
Yeah.
that you are faithful to every Saturday.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and that really touched me to know
Yes.
of all the things that you
Yes,
accomplished.
yes.
That you
I want
still,
you to know how great I am. Listen.
I did want to ask you a question. I think Dr. Riggins Earl kind of alluded to it. How do we begin to pass the torch from your generation to my generation, in that we may continue to fight the struggle?
And may I couch it with saying that that Jeffrey Dove is also the student Christian lead.
Okay, good enough. He's over to what was the name of that school?
Atlanta Prep.
It's good to have good men there. But really, is that with all those kids over there, there's very few. There's only about 3 black teachers, male teachers out there. See, one of the real problems, right, is that in fact, let's get back to the question, but not until I say one other thing, right, about that, right? If we had a Christian education program in every church where we paid people to be a Christian education director.
That's right.
Oh, have mercy.
That's right.
And we made certain that the schools were open to black male teachers so they don't feel lonely there, right? Right? Is that we can get rid of a good part of our unemployment problem, right? Is that most cultures, they absorb people within their own institutions, right? We don't have enough institutions to do that. So we're continuously begging just to live. But, okay, now, the question, I've got that out of my system, so the question,
How do we pass the torch from generation
Yeah.
to generation?
You know what? The answer to most questions is simple. Make them Christian. See what I mean? Make them Christian, right? See, the problem is when we decide to make white people Christians, it just seems so big for you, right? It's easy if we're talking about it on a small scale. It's just as easy if we talk about it on a large scale. This is what we proved in the civil rights movement, that we were a minority. See, well, well, no, go on. I'm gonna deal with this.
But isn't that the issue? The problem is making them Christian.
That's it.
Because if we really consider Christ was never a Christian.
Well,
You know, he was a
I mean,
follower of the way.
He was not a
And when you start
cultural
talking
Christian.
about the
He
Christianity,
was the Christian.
he was the anointed.
Yeah.
However, when you start talking about Christianity, I have a problem. The reason we're so able to allow racism, evangelicals can support a Republican platform that is laden with racism, is because I believe that Christianity has bedded down with Constantine the Empire.
But shall we say with culture? So when he's dead, doesn't matter. You understand? See, we are a cultural religion. See, that's the problem. The culture is more important than the religion. Huh? See, but the culture is the religion is supposed to change the culture. The culture is not supposed to weaken the religion. That's why I went to that thing about three denominations. The ones that come closest to being Christ are the smallest in the country. Huh? Because white people aren't going to join them. Hmm?
That's right.
I think that you have a very good point right there. And the book Country of My Skull, and where they were talking about South Africa. In South Africa, they repented for their apartheid, and as a result, they have a different relationship with the blacks in South Africa than the blacks in America have.
That's right.
Also,
That's true. Keep going, sis.
I want
It's too good to stop.
about your advocating for us to help people to understand that the love is what's going to change the hearts, and when the hearts are changed, then the actions will change. Dr. Ndungu Tiaforiata, who was pastor emeritus here,
Went the other direction.
whose funeral was on this past Sunday. During his funeral, there was two white people that got up and spoke, and he was talking about how he was a racist, and he went on about his whole lineage and everything. But because Dr. Fariada helped him understand the love of Christ, he was able to change, and that man preached.
See, that's the stuff. You see, when you really change, you can get excited. See, because burdens have been lifted. You don't have to think about the same old mess that you grew up in. You can cast off your father's religion. You know,
It's amazing.
yeah.
And just to add to that, you've seen an awful lot in your life. I mean, you've seen the most vicious racist situations.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Oh, they're so
Florida,
bad.
Bull Connor,
Dog-like teeth.
dogs. I mean, to have witnessed this.
Yeah, that's
Up
right.
close
Yeah,
and
that's
personal.
right. Close and personal is right.
And it's
Blood
sort of-
to show for it.
Yeah.
But-
And the assassination
Yeah.
of Kennedy,
Yeah.
the Kennedy brothers, of Martin King, of Malcolm X, and of the changes with Nixon, Medgar Evers, coming up through with Jesse's rise, and then now the election of President Barack Obama. We're going into the 2012 presidential election, coming up on the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington in 2013. Looking at the landscape, what is your prophetic insight on where we are and where we're going? What's at stake in the process?
You want to preach it, fellas? Is that, just to look at it that way, we are America's Joseph. What Joseph was to the country, to the great country of his time, we are to the greatest country of our time. I'll preach that sometime. It's got a whole lot of stuff. But the point is that he so served, but he so showed by his intelligence, of which he gave credit to his God, that all of Egypt had to begin to take his God seriously. This is what happened with Constantine, right? The reason Constantine anointed Christianity, right, and stopped killing them for fun, right, was because they were honest. He needed honest people, huh? Because they were people that were willing to die for what they believed, right? And he needed people like that, because Rome had been that way one time around holding up the crown, right? The kind of crown they had. But the point is that but it had gone to rot. It was so immoral, right? That he couldn't trust anybody to do anything, and they would kill each other easily because they were no longer saw themselves as sacred, right? Is that now change things. He saw that and he said, "This is what I need to keep an empire going." He was already saying Christianity is real because our gods can't keep the empire going. But these people's gods would keep things going even though they would be killed in the process. See what I mean? Is that the decay was stopped by this Christian influence. See, and what happened here goes it. Is that the long Roman cross destroyed the short Roman sword. See, that's what did it. And when it's a line I love. I thought you were going to love it too. See, but you were wondering what I was saying to him, and I said it. If I said it real quick, you'd say,
we heard
we heard you. See, and this is it. Is that Christianity destroyed their tendencies for murder and not to accept and to belittle everything that wasn't strong of muscle. And the strong of muscle couldn't keep an empire going. Huh? To depend upon weapons couldn't keep an empire going. This is why that Martin King's statue is where it is. He's the only non-president on the American law. Now, that's not an accident. Joseph was the only non-Egyptian in power. All right? And why? Because they found that he could bring the kingdom back into some with power. He saved it and then gave it new life. Right? Now,
Can we process that though? When we look at leaders like that, he also enslaved his people. Next thing you know, he's gone there, and then his people is enslaved. So when we look at a lot of times, when we look at leadership, they get in a position, the next thing you know, now they are being tokens of the empire, enslaving their people. And we feel like today in the 21st century, we see leadership, you in position, but we see it at the expense of generation of people. And we look at Joseph doing the same thing, he become a token of the empire.
Yeah, he came in charge, he was second in command of the empire. Now, see, that's a whole
What-
other
what
difference.
followed?
Yeah, but wait a minute, no. That they became far better to, now, this is what we don't know from scripture. This is what we are assuming, right? And we gotta start there, right? Is that both of us, all right? See, is that what really happened is they began to see his kind, right, Jews, as far greater than they thought they were. In fact,
The
this,
message about that, that a Pharaoh emerged in the lineage, who knew not Joseph.
Yeah.
See? And remember, Joseph died. They didn't keep them to be slaves. The family and all the rest took him back to his homeland, all right? So they were no longer slaves of, right? But now let's look at another thing. Slavery in the world was never what it was in the United States. See, who wrote Aesop? Aesop was a slave. But that's, for us, that would just be a word. They sent him all over the world. He went all over the world doing major, signing major contracts on behalf of, right? So what I'm trying to get you to see is that let's look at race not as it is here, but as it has been in different places. Everybody was enslaved, right? I mean, you could enslave anybody. You could sell yourself into slavery, right? I mean, all of that sort of thing, right? See, it's not like here where it's based upon race, right? See, everything here has been based upon race. That's a whole different thing. What's the thing about American slavery is the words
Cattle slaves.
yeah, but more than that, we got a term, is that it was called the worst slavery in world history.
Yeah.
What's the term?
Dehumanization.
Dehumanization, or?
No, there's a term about it. It was, but the idea is that in fact, but what slavery here and how people were treated was the worst ever. For instance, it was worse in Catholic countries. There was laws about how far and how bad you could treat a slave, right? But not here. All right.
Do you think that that's the case? Because it seems like this is so very compelling and powerful when you look at sort of the backdrop of contemporary politics in light of the slave experience. That the slave experience in America so fundamentally shaped the consciousness and the soul of America that even today, when you hear the pundits and even when you hear the rhetoric of Romney and of the Republican Party, it's sort of, now you see this sentiment, and this has got to concern you. Someone who's fought so hard, you see the sentiment of Newt Gingrich and Romney and almost demonizing the poor. I mean, it's almost like sort of like punishing the poor, saying that if you're poor, it's because.
I know. But see, this is the stuff that bothers me again. Why is the South Baptist both black and white?
Wow.
Why? It's because it was the only free institution either one of us had. Poor white people knew that they were never going to come up underneath how they were treated either. Right?
That's right.
Right. Is that, and so that the only institution we both have, what's the old line that we all know now, said the only board a black man could serve on was the deacon board. See, well, that was the only board a poor white man could serve on.
That's right.
Right? And when you look at church history, right, here, American church history, what you're dealing with is how fast can you move up the scale, right? Right here in terms of these 6 religions, right? Is that each one of you, your parents were trying to move up that social ladder. They have a better shot at that job, all right? The only thing you had with your Baptist is that you had a mass that they didn't have. But the mass you were with were all poor, so they couldn't hire you. But the reason that most Catholics in Chicago, black Catholics in Chicago, it was to get a job. They didn't go to the church to get they went to the Catholic church to get an education for their kids and a job. All right? Is that because that moved up the ladder, right? Moved up the ladder. They didn't even know there was a ladder. All they knew is that their kids needed an education and they needed a job. All right? And the church knew that, so it gave it to them. Right? But they still had to, their kids had to still sing Irish songs. In other words, their culture wasn't complete. But
That's right.
see, is that, and as soon as the black guy said, like in Washington, D.C., Catholic priest, right, started kicking against him, they kicked him out. All right? You see what I mean? The point being is we've been used 5 different ways. At least we should get something out of it. That's the starting point. But if we really get wise, all we have to do is convert them. But you got to tell them the truth, and you got to demand that they hear it. They've got to know that they are racist, right? And that they're not going to heaven, right? And all that talk about heaven and all that, they might as well forget it.
It's like the
It's
old
like
Spanish show.
slaves.
Everybody talks
Something
about
about heaven ain't going
there.
there. See, but now, you talking about getting upset. You wait till you get honest about their granddaddy.
I wanted to ask the question: where do you feel that the movement failed, as far as during the time you were coming up, even until now, where we have all
You mean I was coming up as
a nonviolent participant, and to now to where we have bought into this perceived notion of an American dream, where we weren't given the tools to even survive within the system, and so I just wanted to know.
Because we allowed it. See, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. Martin gave us a system that worked, huh? But so many men, quote unquote, hey, I'm not gonna be nonviolent. He hit me, I'm gonna what? I'm gonna what? But he's not. And he didn't. See, this is exactly the point, right? And he didn't. All right. They were still so afraid of white people that they couldn't deal with them, huh? And but what happened? We got the little dollar and dime stuff, huh? And decided that we're going to stop now, right? We got it, man. We got it. I mean, we can even be an executive now, right? As though that's it. You still didn't own the company.
Dr. King, you did, and I was wondering, Dr. King was assassinated for the Poor People's Campaign. Where do you see the Poor People's Campaign today and how it's helping with the issues that we're talking about today?
In fact, this much that Martin says this: there isn't any Poor People's Campaign now. That's what you're going to see.
Yeah.
See, Martin made it clear. He says we must end racism, structural racism, because that's what we have in right? And you've got to end poverty and war. But then what made it so difficult? He said we got to do them all at once. Can't do them one at a time.
They're so interrelated.
And so
There's
interrelated.
no way you can deal with one without the other.
That's right. This is white life, huh?
White
see, that combination is America itself.
Yes, sir.
Huh? See? Huh? Is that, listen, why do you think we've got, why do you think we have got soldiers all over the world? We haven't left, we have soldiers in every place we've had a war. And all the little countries that we get anything from.
Right.
So when you talk about the rising debt, deficit or debt for the United States,
Yeah.
would you say that most of that debt is coming from the wars and trying to maintain territory of the empire?
Yeah, see, this is a problem. This is a part of the problem that Egypt had to satisfy. Huh?
And Rome,
And
right.
deal with, and Rome. Huh? See, all of that is basic to being an empire. In fact, I've come to the conclusion that the bigger you come as a nation, the better you have to become as a people in order to keep it going. See, I think God's built it into the universe. Huh? Either you become servants to mankind, or you will destroy yourself in the process. Right? See, is that?
So,
I'm gonna be there
that's
in just a minute.
So, that's so prophetic because, and now in Europe you see conversations, a growing movement of intellectuals and leaders saying, what's next? We've seen that capitalism has fallen, that capitalism has met its end, that there is no longer the world can no longer sustain itself based on capitalism. What's next? And
Listen to this,
so
man.
what will happen if the United States has the courage to help transition the world into a new stage?
In fact, right now, you see the big meeting in Washington going on right now. Is deciding how to save the capitalist world. That's really what it's all about. They call it a World Conference on Economic Development or something, right? But the point is how do we, in fact, not only make a billionaire every now and then, how do we keep a billionaire having money? See, the whole thing's coming down. This is why I go back to Joseph again, right? They didn't let him sit on the right hand side of power until when? Until they had to have him. Is that evil never gives way until they have to have you, right? Is that now? And what we're looking at is that Britain was, how did they say it? Sun never sets on pretty soon, right? And they're riding the waves, they're doing it all. Now they're just a little island over there trying to survive. Huh? The only thing they got is a queen, right?
Yeah.
See, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the money left over from robbing the nations.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right? And, see, sooner or later, your sins will do you in. See,
Preaching that, Reverend.
yeah. Oh, yeah, Doc. And I likes to do it. But you see, but this is the stuff that counts.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to know. As we go out of these doors, as we go out in the public, we got to be able to say to those in charge, you're liars and thieves. All right? That's right, Doc. And until you stop your lying and stop your thieving, there is no way for you to even keep what you think you got. Because it all belongs to God and Him. Now, there we start preaching.
I'm sorry, I think the gentleman here.
Oh, pardon. I'm sorry, Doc. I was looking the wrong direction.
And we started to answer the question, really. But I'll try to get my mind around the notion of make them Christian.
Yeah.
The marriage something, because that's what I'm going to explain how, because they ain't come to my church.
That's it. That's right.
And we go to their church.
Oh, but that's the
But they
point.
don't come to my church, so I'm trying to win
You've
by
got to
that.
go to their church. See, we're not going to their church. Huh? There are some people trying to climb a ladder going to their church. All right? The masses of black people aren't going to white churches.
I'm not.
All right?
The masses of black people aren't. Is that if we
That's
when,
right.
when we wanted the stores to treat us right, we went to the stores and said we're not going to do business with them.
That's right.
In other words, we hit them where it counted for them, right? Where it counts for the white Christian is he is not Christian, and you got to take it to him. To stand back and preach it out here is secondary. To talk about it out here is secondary. All right? It has to, in fact, happen in his face, in his place. Right? Now, and don't think that they are not aware, that they're not dumb. Is that, but if you are preaching in a white church on what's the name of our main street in this town? Gate Street. But you see, I preached at what's his name? Church, one of the biggest on the thing, right? No, what is it? It doesn't make any difference. Is that that's the way I do all the time. There's guys who imitate me on that. They say, and Vivian goes, man, forget it. But
do that.
Yeah,
You got a license.
Yeah, I got a license to do that, right? Is that, see, Sapp's one of the most important preachers there, right? All right? On that whole thing, right? Is that, and he knows it. Preaching in his church, he understands what we're talking about, all right? He can only go so far in talking about it, but let me tell you, we have learned that the only way we can be free is to free ourselves.
Yes, sir.
And we should not be upset about that.
Yes, sir.
Because you don't deserve to be free if you're not willing to free
Right.
yourself.
Right.
All right? All right? And the truth is, you won't keep that freedom anyway. If you don't know how you got it,
Yes, sir.
and you aren't willing to suffer for it, and if you don't want it bad enough to make certain that your children are going to be free, you won't keep it anyway.
Right.
Pardon me.
I just had two questions, right? One question, right? Well, this is a statement. See, I'm from Danville, Virginia. I don't know if you know Danville. Danville's
I
the
know
only
Danville. I
only
led a
case where
movement in
y'all
Danville,
came down in
Virginia,
Danville.
right. In
Y'all
fact,
actually lost
I'm going
that.
to a funeral. I'm going to a funeral of Dr. Clark, who was from Danville, a doctorate in mathematics at University of Virginia, right?
Yeah.
And he built he's built a big auditorium on property his family owned, right? And that's where I'm going to.
Then I was kind of outraged at this, right? When Jobs died and Shuttleworth died at the same time. I'm thinking Shuttleworth had just as much potential through this country, had just as much
who
influence.
died at the same time as
Jobs.
Oh, Jobs, right.
Jobs, right.
Yeah.
And I was like saying, like, we didn't even mention, we came to RTC, we had a celebration for honoring Shuttleworth, but it wasn't like his life meant nothing. And Dr. King himself said he was
Fred
one.
Shuttleworth.
Yes,
Yeah,
Fred Shuttleworth. So he was one of the bravest men in the movement.
Ever.
Yeah.
Please believe me,
Right.
I'm here to witness to that this morning, my brother. Fred had more courage than any of us, right? Fred took his family through a mob to get his kids into school. They beat him up for it. It's all right with him, right? My point being is that he understood from the get-go that without the when I got back from Jackson, Mississippi, when I was beating Jackson, Mississippi, is that came into a mass meeting, right? There's only one thing to preach, right? And that was without the shedding of blood. There is no. But didn't somebody finish that for me? I see. I just thought maybe we would
Y'all saved everybody with all that blood that was shed in the civil rights movement.
That's the point. But you know what? Interesting thing about that. Less blood was shed in the civil rights movement fighting for freedom than was shed before we decided to fight for freedom. In fact, they were
because so many Klansmen around, they just going to kill a nigga for the fun. Huh? In fact, there were certain Klan groups that to be a member. Right. We were ending that stuff. Huh? See, so you say, but man, I'm not gonna get hurt. Yeah, they can only beat you once.
Yeah.
Huh?
Kill him once.
Well, and they'll kill you once. And so what? Huh? But let me tell you, they're beating your head every day, right now.
Yes.
Huh? Huh? And not to be able to sacrifice something, not to be able to give up something, huh? And then talk about, I love my church. Well, do you really? Right? What do you really love, brother? Oh.
President Obama has taken a lot of flack in the last year, particularly by Tavis Smiley and Cornel West, for him not being able to do as much as he wants to do for the black community. I wanted you to speak to the difference between a politician and a prophet.
Yeah.
And in regards to, and I also wanted you to go further and answer the question, is it possible for a prophet to be a Christian? I mean, not a prophet, but a politician. Because they become, in essence, the face of the system.
Well,
so,
well, that's not the reason. The reason is because they live by compromise.
Okay.
Right? And the prophet lives by one thing. Right? No, believing in God and demanding that people live for Him and
Bless God.
and by Him.
That's right.
See, because that's the real difference. Huh? The prophet says in fact, the prophet stripped down to nothing to prove he wasn't concerned about things. So you couldn't buy him. Huh? And God took care of him, and He said it, right? Because He knew. Hey, listen, let me tell you, Doc. Is that, listen, I'm 87 years old, right? Now, when the Lord called me, right, I wanted everything that was important in this world, right? To this world is what I should say. Not in this world, to this world, right? And He's been taking care of me ever since, right? And I even messed up once, didn't know bad. And He made me suffer a little, but not really. Right back on line, right? Because He knew I messed up, but that I admitted it. But my point being is, you don't have to worry about nothing. You're the most, going into ministry, being a part of ministry, huh? Believing in the Lord, right, is the best thing that can happen to any human being. All right, stop worrying.
Just to add to that, Doc, when we
We
see,
get off the
and we notice,
we'll be back.
and I know the gentleman in the blue shirt had his hand up real quick, but when you look at the rise of the sort of mega church, pseudo Pentecostal movement, and preachers driving Bentleys, and the sort of the consumerism that has infiltrated the life of the church in dramatic ways.
Oh, that's right.
Sort of the ways in which it's just sort of become part of the consciousness of the church, that it's not only acceptable, it should be desired.
In fact,
and you're strange if you don't desire it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. But you see, you're not Christian if you do desire. Now, what you gonna be strange? Or whether or whether you're gonna think that God isn't. No, it's just that simple, right? Now remember, but what you have to keep all underlined is that most churches are not that way. Huh? See, most churches are not that way. There's only a few great big churches. Huh? There's very few pastors that are like that. Right? See, but we could worry about it because we don't want it to become we don't want too many people to think it is the church, right? And we don't want too many people thinking they got to have a membership in one, right? And we don't want to have too many ministers, who don't go to seminary, right? Thinking that all you have to do is put on a shirt and tie and look good and holler hallelujah and collect money, right? Right?
Yes, sir.
Right. See, is that, but we got to let, just like we got to let white people know that's not Christianity, racism is not Christianity. We have to let the others know that to be concerned about money is not man, is not Christianity. That's right. See, is that we gotta let them know it instead of walking around saying, "Yeah, you doing all right, aren't you, bruh?" You know, he's saying, "You a nigga, aren't you, bruh?" You know, when do we do it right? It all comes down to honesty. Yeah. That's right. Telling the truth.
I had I guess speaking of truth, I had a couple items piggybacking off Justin's question dealing with Cornel West and Tavis Smiley. I used to really, I mean, and I still admire Cornel's work as far as his writing.
Yeah.
But I have a problem with him getting a bus together along with Tavis and going out on this, I guess they call it the four-man. Where would they, I guess my thing is,
there wasn't any poverty to it, and they're not even out there.
Well, my question is, where were they during Bush's term? Poverty was there.
In fact,
poor people were there then. Why didn't they do
precisely
it?
right. And they weren't leading nothing there.
They were not
which
leading
makes
nothing
me
there.
wonder why Chavez was out there at all.
Right.
And if you notice, my brother West was following Chavez.
Right.
You never saw him out front. You saw Chavez and my brother walking along behind him. Upset me because I'm like you. I mean, I really go for West.
Right.
I always have,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Very few people I like to hear better than I like to hear West, right? Is
Right.
that I hope he's off that kick now, right? Because that whole thing's over, right? Is that see?
And it sounds like they're just from, and I just so appreciate your presence, Dr. Vivian, because one of the concerns about focusing on, say, an individual figure like, say, President Obama, is that they miss the economic systems that undergird the entire government.
That's exactly right.
On Wall Street, and the whole embedded nature of the capitalistic fiber of the country. So Obama becomes, in my opinion, a smokescreen from the deeper, profound, embedded issues related to the ways in which the system operates.
Precisely. Now look, we wanted a president, we got one. But you see, there was no way to get the president we wanted. See, we wanted a president that would come in and wave a wand. Well, presidents don't wave wands. They don't want it. See, you know, they don't even have one. Right? You see, but so it's our having to mature politically.
You mean in Black America?
Yeah, in Black America.
because we don't know what to
Having to
expect.
mature politically, right? Is not to expect something that isn't impossible to have. That's that thing in terms of where we're deciding whether to compromise. See, and we as ministers aren't supposed to compromise. And we're supposed to tell the truth regardless of situation. Right? And that's where the importance is. But we have to know that there's not enough of us to change things in a democratic society, but we must change our congregations and let them do the job.
And the second part of that,
Friends, real quick, we have time for about one or two more questions. We don't want to wear Dr. Vivian out. He's been with us already.
Yeah, I was tired.
well, I guess I was going to ask just about the movement with the Occupy movement that are going on throughout America, you know, the world. What do you think about?
Oh, I think it's exactly right, except that they are not mature enough. You see, here's what happened. Here's what happened. They put their finger on what the problem was, and the problem is so bad. That's it. that average people know that somebody needed to put their finger on it. They put their finger on it, but they didn't know how to, they don't have a spokesman. They don't have a statement of purpose. They don't have a what to do. They don't know what they want them to do, right? Is that, you could go down the list. Everything that we had that caused us to win, they don't have any of it.
Wow.
See, and that's what's killing.
Sir, it is apparent that there is time for confrontation. And it's like, you want to make a difference, but where do you begin? And I put down who we don't do evangelicals because they're our Christian brothers and sisters who are supporting a platform that's anti-Christian, or do we confront the politician, or do we confront both?
See, that's what I'm saying from the very beginning. Tell them they're not Christian.
So that's where the conversation begins.
That's where the conversation begins. If the Christian church is to be effective on social issues, right? And it's supposed to be, because we're supposed to be creating a Christian society.
Wow.
Right? There's no such thing as a Christian America.
You know, we haven't used that language of heresy in a long time.
We haven't, and that's the point. And you got it. And if brother shouting it, is that when we know what heresy is, when we study it, and when we realize that it's up to us to declare heresy in the Christian church, right? Is that then we're on the ball. At this level, we got to call it heresy, right? All right, and bring them into God's court. Right? See, that's what it's really about. Is that when we tell them they are not Christian, and make them define it.
Yes, sir.
And that's why all we need is the New Testament, and we can define it. Right? And see, this is why I remember I said, is whose God is God would have changed everything right off the bat. Right? See, because what Martin did, remember, you got to know what Martin did. See, we see him moving all around the country and hitting things and making speeches. What he did was to reach the conscience of America. That was a moral and spiritual movement, reaching the conscience of America, right? That's what changed it. It was not the walking down the street that did it. You got to walk down the street, but you got to understand why you're doing it. Right? Because you're drawing attention to the fact that the people are wrong. Right? We didn't go to enough churches. When we were on TV, we didn't say, whose God is God? Is God a God of color? Or is God a God of truth and justice and love? And if he's one, he can't be the other. Right? Right? All right. If that's what you call God, God doesn't call God that God. Right? See, and when you look at the Old Testament, which most of the guys stuff preach, I just like the New Testament stuff, right? It gets to the point, right? That was the big issue of the Old Testament. Huh? Whose God is God?
Yeah, the showdown
That's it. That's it. See, that's it. Yeah, see, that's what it came to. That's what it's always about. That's what it's always about, right? Whose God is God? Listen, the reason we're sitting here with 6 different denominations is because they were trying to say, my denomination is better than yours because on this issue we're better than you. But at least they were fighting about it. You know the point? Is that we're not fighting about anything. We're letting anybody who wants to call themselves a Christian get by with it. Right? And the truth is, then what that does is to bring you down. We're right back to what's the truth.
Well, please.